All right, looks like we've got another deep dive ahead of us, and this one is taking us to 847 Fillmore Street, right here in San Francisco.
A real treasure trove of sources you've gathered on this one.
Yeah, and it seems like we're not just going to be focusing on the building itself, but on how it became a stage for some pretty fascinating characters and historical moments.
Absolutely. What really grabs my attention is how this one address, a grand Victorian in Alamo Square no less, reflects these wider changes in San Francisco's social and political scene.
Like we're peering through a keyhole into a specific time and place.
Exactly.
So, to set the stage, why don't we start with 847 Fillmore in its early days? We've got property descriptions, some historical sketches, and they paint a picture of a real showstopper.
Oh yeah, think classic Queen Anne Victorian, all the fancy trimmings.
The whole 9 yards.
Intricate scroll work, textured stucco, bay windows looking out over a bustling Alamo Square.
A neighborhood known for its mix of residents and cultural influences even back then.
That's right. It's 1893. The house is brand new, belongs to a David B. factor.
We know he had a water service agreement with Spring Valley Waterworks.
Right. But the story really gets going with the next owner, Henry Reedon.
Ah, Reedon. San Francisco's fire commissioner, if I'm not mistaken.
You are not.
And get this, during the 1906 earthquake, 847 Fillmore served as a temporary headquarters for the fire department.
Speaks volumes about his role in the city's response.
Absolutely, and there's this story about a lavish dinner party thrown in his honor at the house. Mayor Schmitz was even there.
A little peek into his social circles.
But of course, it wasn't all fancy parties and political clout.
No, we've got these news clippings, too. Stories about burglaries at the house.
What'd they get away with?
Oh, everything from a sealskin coat to, get this, a diamond pen.
A diamond pen?
Diamond pen.
Wow, some things never change, even in a stately Victorian.
Right.
But things do start to shift in the 1930s as the Great Depression digs in, social unrest is bubbling up, and this is where our next key player, Benny Dobbs, comes into the story.
This is where 847 Fillmore takes on a whole new identity.
It goes from a private residence to a social hall, a place where different groups are meeting.
Including Dobbs's chapter of the Young Communist League, the YCL.
And what happens within those walls gives us a direct line to the anxieties and the political fervor of the era.
Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. And that brings us to the Dictograph incident. This is like something out of a spy movie.
Oh, for sure.
A reporter and a bunch of detectives secretly plant a listening device in one of the meeting rooms at 847 Fillmore.
Capturing Dobbs and his comrades talking about their plans.
Sounds like a scene from The Wire.
It really does. It's 1936, and what they recorded gives us this amazing window into the YCL's activities.
What kind of stuff are we talking about here?
Trying to gain influence within unions, critiquing capitalism. There were even discussions about infiltrating the army.
Wow.
The transcript is like a time capsule, their fiery speeches, their grand ambitions for social change.
You know, one line that really stood out to me was when Dobbs says to a younger comrade, "We are plenty close to the revolution. Don't let anyone kid you."
It really captures that sense of urgency, that feeling that change was just around the corner.
These weren't just armchair revolutionaries. They truly believed they were on the verge of a major societal shift.
Absolutely, and it's crucial to understand this in the context of the Great Depression.
People were desperate, traditional systems had failed them, and communism seemed like a beacon of hope for some.
Exactly. Dobbs' words, as jarring as they might sound today, reflect that deep longing for change that defined that period.
But it also raises some thorny questions about surveillance and how we gather information.
It does.
But maybe we'll leave those for another time.
Sounds good.
Let's focus on Dobbs for a minute. Who was this young man speaking with such conviction and charisma?
Well, to get to know Dobbs, we need to rewind a bit.
Okay.
Luckily, we've got some interviews, biographical snippets, that offer these glimpses into his early life.
What kind of background did he come from?
Working class experienced the struggles of everyday folks firsthand, especially during those tough economic times.
And it's during those formative years he stumbles upon communist ideology.
For him, it wasn't just a theory, it was a potential solution to the real problems he was witnessing.
And what's remarkable is how he channeled that passion into his talents.
Oh yeah, he was involved with the Blue Blouses.
The Blue Blouses.
A leftist theater troupe who used their performances for both political commentary and to raise funds.
A real multi-hyphenate.
For sure, and this is where his charisma, his theatrical flair, which we hear in those Dictograph recordings, it all starts to take shape.
So he's blending art and activism from the very beginning.
He is, and that's a thread that runs throughout his life. even as the political landscape around him gets a lot more turbulent.
And that's what we'll pick up next time with Dobbs's journey into the heart of the Red Scare.
Really is something how Dobbs managed to weave those artistic talents of his with his political beliefs.
Yeah, the Blue Blouses weren't just putting on shows. They were using theater as a platform for social commentary.
A way to reach people on a deeper level.
Get them thinking critically about the big issues.
Exactly.
Sounds like he had a knack for storytelling.
Oh, he did.
And that skill set would prove pretty valuable later on, even as the political scene started to shift.
Oh, absolutely. His story takes a pretty dramatic turn as we move into the Red Scare era.
But that was a time of intense anti-communist sentiment, wasn't it?
It was.
After World War II.
The U.S. ripped by this paranoia, and here's Dobbs, a committed communist.
At a time when those beliefs were seen as a threat to American values, to national security.
Exactly.
Must have been incredibly challenging to hold on to those convictions in the face of such widespread fear.
You can imagine the pressure.
And of course, Dobbs' activism lands him right in the FBI's crosshairs.
1951, he's arrested in Los Angeles, along with 20 other members of the Communist Party USA.
The Los Angeles 21.
The Los Angeles 21.
Sounds like the title of a Cold War thriller.
It does, doesn't it?
What were they accused of exactly?
Conspiring to overthrow the U.S. government.
Wow, that's a serious charge.
It was.
What kind of evidence did they have?
The prosecution really leaned on their promotion of Marxist ideology.
The idea of a classless society, the critique of capitalism.
That's right, plus their alleged ties to the Soviet Union.
Classic guilt by association, fueled by those Cold War anxieties.
It was.
You know, it's unsettling to think that people could be targeted and imprisoned simply for their beliefs.
It is.
Just for advocating for a different political system.
It really highlights how fragile civil liberties can be, especially in those times of fear.
Absolutely. The Red Scare was a dark chapter in American history.
Freedom of speech, freedom of association, all under attack.
And the trial of the Los Angeles 21 becomes a symbol of that era's political repression.
It does.
So what happened to Dobbs and the other defendants?
What was the outcome of this high-stakes trial?
Yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat here.
Well, they were initially found guilty.
Not surprising, given the political climate.
No, but it doesn't end there.
No.
The verdict was actually reversed by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1957.
That's a relief to hear.
A landmark decision really helped curb the excesses of McCarthyism.
And reaffirm the importance of free speech.
Exactly.
Still, I can only imagine what that legal battle must have done to Dobbs and the others.
Years of their lives consumed by accusations, trials, the constant threat of imprisonment.
It's a lot to carry.
It is.
You know, it makes you wonder how he reconciled his beliefs with what was actually happening in the Soviet Union under Stalin.
How he squared that circle.
We know now that that communist utopia, the one so many people dreamed of, was far from the reality experienced under those regimes.
We do, and we actually have some later interviews where Dobbs talks about the disillusionment he felt.
He does.
He does, and he wasn't alone. Many American communists felt it too, as the truth about Stalin's crimes started to come out.
They'd idealized the Soviet experiment.
And then the reality hit.
Must have been a tough pill to swallow.
To dedicate your life to a cause, only to find out that it's built on such darkness and hypocrisy.
Absolutely. It was a turning point for a lot of people.
Dobbs included. He actually left the Communist Party in the early 1960s.
So he walked away from it all.
He did, but his commitment to social justice, to a more equitable world, that didn't disappear.
So he just changed his approach.
Exactly. He joined groups like the Democratic Socialists of America.
Continued to participate in various protest movements.
He did.
It's kind of inspiring. Even after everything he went through, he never gave up on fighting for change.
His life really speaks to that enduring power of idealism.
Even when faced with some harsh realities.
It also reminds us that the fight for social justice, it's rarely straightforward.
Not straight line.
No, it's full of twists and turns, setbacks, course corrections.
Speaking of twists and turns, let's loop back to 847 Fillmore.
Okay.
What became of the house after the Marcus family, after those 3 fires?
Well, 847 Fillmore, it kept reflecting the changing tides of San Francisco.
It did.
Went through a series of owners.
Each one leaving their mark.
There were times of neglect, almost got demolished at one point.
Really?
And then there's the displacement of residents during World War II.
Displacements.
Yeah, that's a part of the story that deserves more attention.
What happened?
Well, during the war, the neighborhood, which had a significant Japanese-American population, got caught up in that wave of forced internment.
Oh, right.
Families were uprooted from their homes.
Sense of camps.
A truly shameful chapter in American history.
It's heartbreaking to think about what those families went through, torn from their communities, simply because of their ancestry.
It adds another layer of complexity to the story of 847 Fillmore.
Shows how this one address witnessed not just triumphs and social gatherings, but also some of the darker moments in San Francisco's past.
It does.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about dates and grand narratives.
It's about people's lives, the joys and sorrows that played out in these very rooms.
Exactly. And those stories deserve to be told.
But let's not dwell on the past too much.
We're right.
What about 847 Fillmore today?
Quite the transformation, isn't it?
It is.
From what I've seen, it's gone through a major renovation.
Blending its Victorian roots with a modern aesthetic.
A far cry from its days as a social hall for the YCL.
It is. Imagine this. You walk through a tall, modern gate into a private courtyard.
Okay.
And there it is, 847 Fillmore.
Still standing.
The facade is a dark, elegant stucco now.
Different from its brightly colored Victorian days.
It is, but those bay windows, the arched entryway, they still hint at its past.
They managed to keep some of the historical elements while giving it a contemporary feel.
They did?
What's it like inside?
Oh, it's all luxury and modern design now.
What kind of stuff are we talking about?
European white oak floors, a gourmet kitchen with all the fancy appliances, a quartz waterfall island, 4 wood-burning fireplaces.
That's a lot of fireplaces.
And the best part? A brand new 500-square-foot rooftop deck.
With panoramic views of the city, I bet.
You bet.
From a gathering place for young communists to a high-end residence with city views.
It really speaks to how much San Francisco itself has changed over the years.
And raises some interesting questions about gentrification, affordability.
And the changing demographics of the city.
What do you think Benny Dobbs would make of 847 Fillmore today?
The man who fought so passionately for social and economic equality?
That's a good question.
Would he see it as a sign of progress?
Or would he be lamenting the loss of those social spaces where people from all walks of life could come together and advocate for change?
Hard to say.
It is.
But I think it's a testament to the power of this place that we're even having this conversation.
You're right.
847 Fillmore, in all its different forms, it still sparks dialogue, challenges assumptions.
Connects us to the complexities of San Francisco's past and present.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that history isn't static. It's a living thing that continues to shape how we see the world around us.
It does.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about how one address can reflect a whole city's journey.
It's incredible.
From that Victorian elegance to a hub of leftist activism, and now this modern, luxurious space.
Makes you think about how we try to balance preserving the past and embracing the future.
Especially in a city like San Francisco, where change is a constant.
Always reinventing itself.
We were talking about Benny Dobbs and what he might make of 847 Fillmore today.
Right.
It's hard to imagine him feeling completely at ease with it, given his lifelong commitment to social justice, his critique of capitalism.
You'd think he'd see it as a symbol of the inequalities he dedicated his life to fighting against.
Almost like a victory for gentrification and displacement.
Especially here in San Francisco, where the cost of living is so high, pushing people out of their communities.
But then again, Dobbs was also a pragmatist, wasn't he?
He was.
Adapted his views over time.
Moved away from that orthodox communism.
Found common ground with other progressive movements.
He did.
So maybe he'd see the preservation of 847 Fillmore, even in its transformed state, as a kind of win.
It's a good point. So many historical buildings were just gone, demolished, the stories erased.
Lost forever.
But 847 Fillmore, it's still standing.
And it's not just standing there forgotten. Its history is being documented.
Right, through digital tours, podcasts like ours, historical accounts.
It shows that people recognize its significance.
Even if its current purpose is very different from its past.
I wonder if you'd find a glimmer of hope in the idea that 847 Fillmore could still be a place for dialogue.
A space where people can engage with San Francisco's history and grapple with the challenges the city faces today.
That's a nice thought. Maybe not the same kind of gathering place it was during Dobbs' time with the YCL.
True.
But maybe it could still foster a sense of community.
A place where people can talk about social justice, urban development, the meaning of progress.
We can't know for sure what Benny Dobbs would make of 847 Fillmore today.
No, we can't.
But his story, intertwined with the history of this house, definitely gives us something to think about.
It does.
Reminds us that change is a given.
And that progress isn't always a straight line.
that even the most well-intentioned movements can have their complexities and contradictions.
Absolutely.
It really underscores the importance of staying engaged, of being willing to adapt our perspectives.
And of never losing sight of the ideals that drive us to create a more just and equitable world.
Well said. And as we wrap up our deep dive into 847 Fillmore Street, we hope you, our listener, will take these reflections with you.
Remember, history isn't something confined to textbooks.
It's all around us,
In the buildings we inhabit, the stories we
the
share.
conversations we have.
So keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep seeking those hidden connections that link the past to the present and the future.
And on that note, we say farewell from the deep dive.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through time.
We hope you'll be back for our next exploration into the fascinating stories that are often hidden in plain sight.